She stopped for gas, thinking it would take 2 minutes. Instead, it turned into the most frightening moment of her life. A group of men decided she didn't belong there. Not because of anything she did, but because of who she was. They circled closer. The laughs got louder. The road stayed empty. Then something unexpected happened. A motorcycle rolled in. And the moment a Hell's Angel stepped off his bike, everything changed. Stay with this story, because what happened next says a lot about fear, courage, and who really stands up when it counts. It was just after sunset. One of those evenings where the sky still holds a little orange. But the air already feels heavy. The kind of place where nothing ever really happens. A small gas station off a 2-lane highway. Flickering lights. A soda machine humming too loud. She pulled in alone. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is she was tired. Long shift. Empty tank. She wanted gas, maybe a coffee, then home. She didn't see them at first. 4 men. Parked near the side. Loud. Drunk enough to be careless, sober enough to be cruel. The kind of men who look around before they act. Not to stop themselves, but to make sure no one's watching. She stepped out of her car. That's when one of them noticed. You can feel moments like that before they fully happen. A shift in the air. Laughter that stops for half a second. Eyes locking on something they've decided doesn't belong. One of them said it loud enough for her to hear. Then another joined in. Comments about her skin. About where she should or shouldn't be. About how this was their town. She froze. Not because she was weak. Because she'd learned. Learned that reacting can make things worse. Learned to stay calm, keep your head down, get what you need, and leave. She turned toward the pump and tried to ignore them. They didn't let it go. One of them walked closer. Slow. Smiling. Saying things that weren't jokes and weren't threats yet. Testing how far he could go. Her heart was pounding now. You could see it in the way her hands shook as she grabbed the nozzle. She glanced toward the store. No help there. The clerk stayed behind the glass, pretending to reorganize candy bars. The road was quiet. Then she heard it. A low rumble. At first it sounded like thunder far away. Then it got closer, louder, heavier. A motorcycle. Not just any bike. A big one. The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that doesn't apologize for the noise it makes. The men turned their heads. Down the road came a Hell's Angel. Black leather vest. Patches worn from years on the road. Long beard streaked with gray. Boots that hit the ground like they expected it to move out of the way. He pulled in slow. Didn't look at anyone at first. Cut the engine. Silence fell hard. The man stepped off his bike. He didn't shout. Didn't rush. Didn't posture. He walked to the pump next to hers. Then he noticed her face. The fear she was trying to hide. Then he noticed them. 4 men. Too close. Too confident. Too stupid. One of them laughed and said something under his breath. The biker turned his head. Just slightly. Is there a problem here? His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The men puffed up a little. Tried to act like they hadn't been doing anything. One of them said it was none of his business. The biker looked at the woman. You okay, ma'am? She nodded barely. That was enough. He turned back to the men. You were saying? Suddenly the jokes weren't so funny. One of them stepped back without realizing it. Another crossed his arms, trying to save face. You want to make it a problem? One of them said. The biker smiled. Not a friendly smile. More like someone remembering something he'd already survived. You already did. He took one step forward. That was it. Something changed. They could see it now. This wasn't a guy looking for trouble. This was a guy who had lived through worse than whatever they were pretending to be. Cars slowed on the highway. The clerk finally looked up. One of the men muttered something about leaving. Another said they didn't want drama. The biker nodded. Smart. They walked away, fast, back to their truck. Tires screeched as they peeled out of the lot. Gone. The woman stood there, shaking. The biker waited until her tank clicked full. You're safe, he said. She thanked him. Her voice cracked. He shrugged like it was nothing. World's ugly enough already. He got back on his bike. Before leaving, he looked at her one more time. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Not here, not anywhere. Then he rode off. The noise faded into the distance. The gas station went back to normal. But for her, something stayed. Not just relief. Proof that sometimes when the world shows its worst side, someone unexpected steps in. Not for praise, not for cameras, just because it's the right thing to do. And that matters more than people think. She sat in her car for a long time after he left. The engine was on, but she wasn't moving. Her hands were still on the steering wheel, tighter than they needed to be. Her heart was calming down, but her thoughts weren't. What almost happened kept replaying in her head. Every word, every look, every step those men took closer. People think moments like that end when the danger leaves. They don't. They stay with you. She drove home slowly. Every car behind her felt too close. Every red light felt too long. When she finally parked, she didn't go inside right away. She just sat there, safe but shaken. Across town, the biker kept riding. The road stretched out in front of him, familiar and quiet. He'd ridden thousands of miles like this, through deserts, through storms, through places where nobody asked questions. But tonight stayed with him too. Not because it was dangerous, because it was familiar. He'd seen that look before, fear mixed with pride. The kind that says someone has learned to survive by staying quiet. He hated that look. People like to talk about bikers like him. They judged the patches, the beard, the noise. They assumed violence came with the leather. They never talked about the other side. About the times he didn't look away. About the times he stepped in because someone had to. The next morning, the gas station was back to normal. Coffee brewing, trucks stopping in, the clerk chatting like nothing ever happened. But word spread anyway, not fast, not loud, just whispers. About the men who ran, about the biker who didn't. Some people laughed it off, said it was exaggerated. Others went quiet, because deep down they knew it was true. The woman went back to work that day. She smiled at customers, did her job, acted normal. But something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not as a problem, not as a target, just as a person worth protecting. That mattered. Later that week, one of the men from the group drove past the gas station again. He didn't stop. He slowed down, looked at the pumps, then kept driving. Fear works both ways. When bullies lose control once, they remember it. Somewhere on the highway, the biker stopped at another station. Different town, same routine. As he filled his tank, a kid stared at his bike, wide-eyed. "Are you scary?" the kid asked. The biker smiled. Only to people who are. He rode off again. Another road, another night. The world didn't suddenly become better. Racism didn't end. Hate didn't disappear. But for one moment, in one small place, it didn't win. And that's how change really starts. Not with speeches, not with crowds, but with one person deciding not to stay silent. Days passed, but the memory didn't fade. It sharpened. The woman noticed it in small ways. How she checked her mirrors more often. How she chose where to stop, where to park, where to stand. Survival had always been part of her life, but now it felt louder. She told no one at first. Not because she was ashamed, but because explaining it felt exhausting. People always ask the same questions. Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you call someone? Why didn't you fight back? They never asked why it happened in the first place. One evening, she finally told her sister. They sat on the couch, lights low, TV on mute. As the story came out, her voice stayed calm, but her hands gave her away. When she finished, her sister said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm glad someone showed up." So was she. Across the state line, the biker stopped at a roadside bar he'd known for years. Same cracked stools, same old jukebox. A few riders nodded when he walked in. Someone mentioned the gas station. "You hear about that mess?" a man asked. The biker took a sip and shrugged. "Just noise," he said. But the room knew better. Men like that didn't brag. They didn't need to. Respect followed them quietly. Outside, the night air was cold. He leaned against his bike and thought about how close it had been. If he'd stopped 5 minutes later. If he'd chosen a different road, chance saved her. That bothered him. Back in town, the gas station clerk finally spoke up to his manager. Said he didn't feel right about staying silent. Said next time he'd call for help. It wasn't brave, but it was something. The men who caused it all felt the shift too. They still laughed with their friends, still talked tough. But when they passed groups of strangers, their eyes dropped quicker than before. Fear leaves a mark. The woman returned to the gas station a week later. Not because she had to, but because she refused to let that place own her fear. She stood a little taller this time, filled her tank. Left without rushing. As she pulled onto the road, a motorcycle passed her going the other way. For half a second, she wondered if it was him. She never knew. But she smiled anyway. Because the story wasn't really about a biker. It wasn't about a gang. It was about a moment when hate expected silence and didn't get it. Those moments don't make the news. They don't trend, but they change people. Time moved on, but the town didn't forget. Small places never do. People stopped talking about the incident out loud, yet everyone knew. A look held too long. A conversation that went quiet when certain names came up. The gas station felt different now. Like something had cracked, even if no one admitted it. The woman noticed it the next time she walked inside. The clerk nodded at her. Not casual, not distant, respectful. That was new. She paid for her coffee and left, but the feeling stayed with her. For years, she'd learned to move through spaces carefully, like a guest who could be asked to leave at any moment. Now for the first time she felt rooted. Not welcomed by everyone, but no longer invisible. That mattered more than she expected. Late one night, one of the men from that group sat alone in his truck. The radio played softly. His friends were gone. The laughter was gone. What stayed was the image he couldn't shake. A man stepping off a bike. No fear, no rush, just certainty. He told himself it didn't mean anything. Told himself they'd just been unlucky. But deep down, something had shifted. Power felt less solid when it cracked once. Across the highway, the biker rode under a wide, open sky. He didn't think of himself as a hero. Never had. He'd made mistakes in his life. Plenty of them. He knew the weight of regret better than praise. But he also knew this. When you see something wrong and do nothing, it stays with you forever. He'd learned that the hard way. Somewhere ahead, another town waited. Another stop. Another chance to mind his business or step in. Back home, the woman stood in her kitchen, phone in hand. She hovered over a message she hadn't sent yet. A short post, just a few lines. No names, no drama, just the truth of what happened. She hesitated. Then she posted it. Not for revenge, for release. By morning, it had been shared more times than she expected. Messages came in, from people who'd been through the same thing, from people who wished someone had shown up for them too. She read everyone. The world didn't change overnight. But a few people felt less alone. And sometimes that's how change starts. Quietly, slowly, one voice at a time. Out on the road, a motorcycle engine echoed through the dark. Another night, another choice waiting just ahead.